One of the biggest stories about Ohio State's win over Notre Dame was how their defense played throughout crucial points of the game. And once again, my eyes are on that defense and thinking about how they will play when they're tested by the Maryland Terrapins on Saturday afternoon.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Buckeye fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Buckeyes for the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. It is a Tuesday, October 3rd in the year, 2023, and this episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. During today's episode, I have 3 questions for Ryan Day, and I will unveil my college football top 10. But first, Ohio State's defense this year remains, for some reason, quietly the biggest story of the team. Kyle McCord, Ryan Day, they're going to get the attention. They're going to get the clicks. We have talked about that numerous times on this show. But that defense, man, I believe they've only allowed 4 touchdowns all year, and I do believe that number is correct. When you think about how many touchdowns they've allowed, have they been big chunk plays? No. Where have they been? I believe it was 1 against Youngstown State, 1 against Western Kentucky, 2 against Notre Dame. All 4 came in the red zone for the opposing offense. So you're long, drawn-out drives where you're sustaining 8, 10, 12, maybe 15-play drives where you're working really hard to move every yard down the field. Ultimately, you do score at the end, so it is a success for you. But ultimately, you're having to work hard, really hard, buddy, to get the ball down the field. Ohio State's defense to date, and we have touched on this a few times so far this year. But let's look at these numbers once again. Ohio State's defense is as they've only given up 596 total passing yards all season. Only one team has thrown for over 200 yards. That is Western Kentucky, total of 204. The starting quarterback, let's keep it in context, Austin Reed threw for 207 in that game. Backup came in through a pass for -3 yards. They've given up a total of 426 rushing yards this season, averaging 3.1 yards per carry. Only one team has averaged over 100 yards in a game. That was Notre Dame, and they rushed for 176. Here's a weird, odd note that it just popped into my mind. Notre Dame ran for more yards than they threw for against Ohio State. So we talk about how good this defense is. One of those things that people have been waiting for for a long time is for the secondary to be what we expect it to be. And it seems like this year's secondary might be on that track. Now, they've only played 2 of the 4 opponents they've only played 2 opponents out of the 4 that have a legitimate and realistically good passing attack in Notre Dame and Western Kentucky. So when you keep that in context, yes, 2 of their 4 games or 2 of their 4 tests have been against guys that might play in the NFL, Austin Reed and Sam Hartman. And the Buckeyes defensive backs showed up in those games. They're going to have to show up again over the weekend when they face Maryland. Maryland this year, offensively, they have thrown for over 200 yards in every game this year, thrown for over 300 yards in 2 games, and a win over Virginia and a win over the Indiana Hoosiers, who are trash, absolutely embarrassingly trash. They have ran for over 200 yards in 1 game. That was against Charlotte, a lesser opponent. But the least amount of rushing yards they've had this season is 119, and that came against Virginia, an ACC opponent. So just those numbers there alone will show you something that Maryland's a lot better offensively than what Ohio State has dealt with. Even in the game against Notre Dame, Ohio State's defense showed up. If you were to ask me going into that game, would Ohio State's defense hold Notre Dame to under 200 rushing yards and under 200 passing yards? I would have said absolutely not. One of those eclipsed the 200-yard mark, and I would have probably said the passing, because it's easier to do so, than the rushing. But This defense is showing us, even though there are some things that we want to see better. And I say we collectively because I want to see things better. You want to see things better. That's how the we and the collective grouping and that phrase comes together. They're doing a really good job of their job. And Jim Knowles, one thing I would like to see is more pressure. No, I don't have 3 questions for Jim Knowles for us today, even though he will be talking to the media. If I had 3 questions, if I had a question for Jim Knowles, which that might find its way into the show later on, it might be something about the pass rush game with a couple specific players in mind, players that I've mentioned here. You know what? I will throw that in there in the very next segment. So 3 plus 1, 3 for Ryan Day and 1 for Jim Knowles. That was not planned for the day, but why not? Let's have a little bit more fun. This defense is going to need to stick to their keys. Remember where their vision is supposed to be, what their key is on this particular play. Sometimes, and a lot of times, I watch a game, and I know you do as well, and you can see pre-snap offensive lineman maybe leaning back for pass rush, maybe leaning left or leaning right to tell you that he's pulling. And sometimes the position that he is going is not where the ball is going. So all of a sudden, you may be an LB, and you take 2 steps, and then you pause for half a second or 3/4 of a second. The next thing you know, you pause, you lean a little left, the back goes to your right, you get stuck in the mud, off of the lineman gets a hold of you, sucks you in. Next thing you know, that back that you pause when trying to figure out where the ball is going to go, the back goes out for 10, 12, 15 yards. You're like, man, that's my play. Like instead of 15-yard gain, that's a 2-yard gain. Why? Because that's my play. So the Buckeyes in this game need to specifically read their keys. One of the interesting notes about Maryland's offense, and it's one thing that I probably should have expected, but at the time I was thinking a little bit differently. When you go to overall team stats and leaders, Talia doesn't really run the ball. He can move behind the line of scrimmage and move in the pocket very well. He's not really a big threat in the running game. 14 carries, 68 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. That is Tua Tagovailoa's brother, who has been the Maryland quarterback over the past few years. Roman Hemby, 309 rushing yards. Kobe McDonald, 204 rushing yards. Those two combined for 6 rushing touchdowns. Passing-wise, though, Talia's not your normal quarterback. 65.7% completion percentage, over 1,400 passing yards, 13 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. He has gotten a lot better over the past few years, and especially over this offseason until now, to lead Maryland to a 5-0 start going into the season. I would not have expected Maryland to be 5-0 right now. That might be why Big Noon is coming to Columbus for this game. This defense, I believe they're up to the task, but the question remains, can the defense remain dominant against Maryland? We got to wait a few days to see how they perform in this matchup. Coming up next, originally supposed to be 3 questions for Ryan Day. Now it's 3 for Day, 1 for Jim Knowles. Got some questions for the Ohio State head coach and the defensive coordinator. They're coming at you next on Locked on Buckeyes. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Gametime. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. Forget planning months in advance. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the date of the event. The Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. This episode is also brought to you by Billiards Plus. Billiards Plus has the best selection of pool tables, game tables, shuffleboard tables, and more. And the best service in Central Ohio. And did you know Billiards Plus has top-of-the-line grills with up to 30-year warranties? That's longer than most roofs. Billiards Plus carries the best pool tables from Brunswick, Alhassan, Canada, billiards, and more. Plus, top-of-the-line grills from PK, Napoleon, Memphis, and LaGriddle. That could very well be the last grill you own. The perfect gift for any occasion is in stock at Billiards Plus. Go big with an awesome pool table or shuffleboard table, or a little more modest with a dartboard or poker table. No matter the season, Billiards Plus has you covered for all your indoor and outdoor entertainment needs. And the people at Billiards Plus are the best part of the experience. Kenny, Sarah, and the whole staff will take amazing care of you. Billiards Plus, visit their showroom on Dublin Center Drive in Dublin. 3 questions for Ryan Day, 1 question for Jim Knowles. Since the question for Jim Knowles is fresh on my mind, let's go ahead and knock that one out before diving into the questions for Ohio State's head coach. Today is the day. The day has its weekly presser, and so this might be something new that we do on the show. We haven't really done it before, but I'm curious. Like, I got questions, you got questions. Leave your comments in the YouTube comments section, or maybe go ahead and leave them in a 5-star review on Apple. That's a great place to leave them as well. Whatever it might be, leave them there. I'm curious what you're thinking and what you want to ask Ryan Day during his weekly press conference. The plus one's going to come first. Jim Knowles. Have the coaches worked on ways to implement Mitchell Melton and Kenyatta Jackson Jr. in the rotation? And I have that question because we have seen Caden Curry. He played last week more of a D-tackle role. I think maybe in a handful of plays. But in a game where you think a big-time game, big-time matchup, Jeff Hunt said it very well. That would have been the game in the week to implement and to bring in the jack position. It's not like you don't have the personnel for it, but it may not be the personnel that may fit how you view that particular game based off the best 11 players or the best players at Ohio State at that time. But I firmly believe, maybe not the jack position, even though I think that's a great wrinkle and an added tool that's in Jim Knowles' back pocket whenever he wants to pull it out. I do believe, though, when it comes to Kenyatta Jackson Jr. and Mitchell Melton, they possess a skill set and a drive and an energy and the juice that occasionally the defense needs at the DN position. K-Jack, as I call him, he is someone that can be really good. Now, I'm not going to say great yet. I haven't seen enough ball to make that big, bold proclamation. But I will say he has a skill set to potentially be good. Consistently on the field, making plays week after week after week. Like, I think he can be that. Mitchell Melton just needs some run, man. Like, practice is one thing. Let that man get on the field, let him spin, let him cook, let him do all the things that he does very, very well. Mitchell Melton is that guy. And so when it comes to defensively, are there plans or how have the coaches worked on implementing K-Jack and M squared, if you want to call Mitchell Melton M squared, just to have another nickname, into the rotation? I think they need to play. I think both of them, you want to add in Caden Curry, all 3 of those guys need to play. Now, it may be a handful or 10 plays total in a game, whatever it may be, but out of those 10 plays, 3 of them are going to be could be extremely and really impactful, which could be pivotal for maybe getting the defense off the field on third down, or maybe getting a sack, forcing a 3rd and long, whatever it might be. There are ways to implement these guys into the lineup. The first question I have for Ryan Day is, are there plans to allow Trey and Chip to get a similar amount of carries? And this is something that I do believe is beneficial for the entire offense. The rushing game has not been up to par. Now, I talked to, was it yesterday or Friday, about maybe the Buckeyes missing Kevin Wilson. And one thing we know about Kevin Wilson, everywhere he goes, there's good O-line play. There is good tight end play. And there's really good running back play. Like, those are things you know about Kevin Wilson. You can say whatever you want about, that 2020 season. Do you realize that Kevin Wilson was probably pivotal in Trey Sermon understanding the offense and him going off in the final stretch of the season? I don't know if the Buckeyes or get to the Natty if it wasn't for Trey Sermon popping off in the Big Ten championship game against Northwestern, in the playoff against Clemson, and he got hurt against Alabama. But I don't think the Buckeyes get to the Natty if it wasn't for Trey Sermon. And I don't have exact knowledge, but my gut tells me Kevin Wilson was pivotal in that happening that season. And what we have seen so far this season, I think Travion has played a lot better than I expected him to. Chip Trainum played very well. If you give those two guys a similar amount of carries, that's drastically going to make things easier for Kyle McCord. And ultimately, that's the name of the game. Find a way to make things easier for your starting quarterback so he can do a better job of moving the ball up and down the field. The next question for Ryan Day is, what has gone on over the past couple weeks to fix some of the kinks that the offensive line still has? Now, I understand that Ryan Day might not go specific and say, we have done this, we have done that. But I understand Ryan Day will open up about this topic because offensively, this continues to be the weakest unit on the team. And it also, going into the season, was probably, and it was expected to be, the weakest unit on the team at this point in the season. Tight end's a little bit different because G. Scott Jr. and Joe Royer, they're not playing as much as a traditional backup tight end at Ohio State. Cade Stover has been solid, been doing what we expect him to do. Receivers are the receivers, and the running backs can improve, but the offensive line truly is the weakest unit on the offense. And is it the weakest unit on the team? Like position group? And if that is the truth, it might make things harder for Kyle McCord against Maryland, Purdue, Penn State, Wisconsin, and the rest of the teams on the schedule for Ohio State. So I'm just curious, like, what has gone on during the bye week to help the O-line get better? Last but not least, last question from Ryan Day. What did you do to enjoy the bye week? Like, football's great. Your job is great. You do a really good job at it. But with the bye week happening and there being less practices during the bye week, what did you and your family do to enjoy this time off? Now, I understand that kids are in school, and so he may have just stayed home with his wife and just relaxed. I don't know. Maybe they had a little time after school where him and the kids did some game time or family time. I don't know, but I'm curious. What did Ryan Day do to enjoy his time during the bye week? My wife and I just got back from Northwest Indiana, took a train ride to Chicago, Illinois for a day. And that was the first time that I ended up being in a city without my own car. Granted, no, take it back. When I went to college for the first year, my parents didn't allow me to have a car. So I had to rely on other people to have cars that had cars to get me around, get me places. And it worked out. Everything worked out. But this was different. Taking public transportation, one, from parking the car in Hammond, Indiana, and then taking a train from Hammond to Chicago, getting up there in Chicago, hopping on the subway or the red line as they call it, and then hopping on there to go somewhere else, and then hopping on a city bus and going around the city. That was the first time I've done that, but it was a fun experience, something that I will do again. Had a fun time. Beautiful city, Chicago. We will definitely go back. How did Ryan Day enjoy the bye week? Like I'm always curious about how coaches, not just head coaches, Jim Knowles, Hartline, and others, how do people enjoy this time off at a profession like the one that they are working? Just curious. That'd be my last question for Ryan Day during his weekly presser. Coming up next, I will unveil my college football top 10, and I am excited to dive into this next with you here on Locked Up Buckeyes. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Bird Dogs. It's that time of year as weather is cooling off. It was warm this past weekend. Sometimes the weather can be unpredictable. And sometimes there are things in your closet that fit how things are currently, but don't fit how things are going to be in a few weeks or maybe in a few hours, where Bird Dogs can help you accomplish this goal. Bird Dog stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. Bird Dog shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but fit way better. The pants fit way better as well. Bird Dogs uses anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. Go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege or enter promo code LockedOnCollege for a free white tech hat with your order. That's birddogs.com/lockedoncollege or use promo code LockedOnCollege for a free white tech hat. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. Your Ohio State Buckeyes play the Maryland Terrapins Saturday afternoon at 12 noon Eastern. The game is going to be on Fox. Also, you can also catch the game on the SXM app. Catch every snap of the Buckeyes hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search Buckeyes. It's that time of week where we get to go over the college football top 10, brought to you by yours truly. This is one that late Saturday night, I was looking forward and watching the game um, between Notre Dame and Duke. And I was tired at the end of the day. Did a lot of walking that day around the city. And so I was curious to see exactly how things were going to go for how's my brain working right now? How things are going to go for Notre Dame. Notre Dame's on the road. It is a test. I understand that Duke, and I did see Duke is a really good football team. So I'm curious, how do you respond after a home loss? How do you respond going on the road against a team that has game day there for the first time and that is trying to find a way to beat the Notre Dame Fighting Irish? Ultimately, Duke lost the game, still in the top 15 of the AP poll. They're not in my top 10, but I guarantee you they're going to be a team that they keep playing. They might be in my top 10 down the road. There's honestly, I don't think much movement, if any at all, in my top 10 this week. Number 10, they got to move one team down. Number 10 is going to be Oklahoma. I messed one up. I knew that before I spoke, I had to change that very quickly. Number 9, USC. Number 8, Washington. Number 7, Oregon. 6, Penn State. 5, Michigan. 4, Ohio State. 3, Texas. 2, Florida State. And 1, Georgia. I am having a hard time with the top of the bracket right now. Really top 10. There's a lot of really good teams. Oklahoma and Texas play Saturday. I believe that game's going to be on ABC, not Big Fox, like I thought it was going to be at the beginning of the season. Oklahoma and Texas play on Saturday. That is a game to watch. Let me go back and look at the schedule really quickly to kind of see what other games are here that are big-time games for us to watch. I haven't really looked much further into the next week yet, but this week, top 25, Oklahoma and Texas. This is AP top 25. LSU goes on the road to 5-0 Missouri, number 21 in the AP poll. Can I just sit here and say I was not expecting Missouri to be 5-0 at this point of the season? Is this a year where they make it back to the SEC championship game? It's possible. I'm not saying it's not. It's possible. But still, that's not something that I was expecting to have. Virginia Tech goes on the road to Florida State. That should be a win for the Seminoles. Alabama goes down to Texas A&M for a road matchup that is going to be on CBS. Kentucky at Georgia, one of the few tough matchups Georgia has this season. Georgia, Brock Bowers, Carson Beck, big late game connection. Brock Bowers goes 51 yards for a touchdown. And I'm sitting here like, oh my. Like, I don't really watch Georgia play very much, but when I do, who pops off the screen? Brock Bowers does. Number 20 versus number 1 in that matchup. Notre Dame has another ranked matchup. They go on the road to Louisville. That is a night game on ABC for Notre Dame and the Louisville Cardinals. That's really it. You don't really have any first-ranked matchups. If you want to watch USC, you can watch them on ESPN Saturday night. As they play Arizona, they should destroy them. Oregon State, 4-1. They play Cal on Saturday night. You get the Pac-12 network. You can catch that game there as well. Ohio State your Buckeyes play the Maryland Terrapins Saturday, 12 noon. It's homecoming on Big Fox. Excuse me. I had to think about that. The following week, little program note that I didn't mention earlier in the show. The Buckeyes are scheduled to play at 12 noon Eastern on Peacock for the first time. Peacock exclusive, only streamed on the Peacock. It's Buckeyes versus Purdue in West Lafayette at Ross-Ade Stadium. They're revamping, doing some renovations there to the football stadium and also the Mackey Arena. Saw a picture of Mackey Arena recently for Purdue, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's nice. Like, I dig that. But the Buckeyes, Peacock on the 13th, 14th, forget the exact date, and on the 14th there, and coming up this weekend in a few days, another test against Maryland. Both teams are 5-0. Excuse me, no. Buckeyes are 4-0. Maryland's 5-0. Still can't believe that. But Are we looking for a season where or a game where the Buckeyes fall in the poll because they're not prepared? Because the game is similar to how it was a year ago, and late game and in the late game situation, the defense does not rise to the occasion. I hope not. I hope it's not how we're looking to see things go this game, but we're going to have to wait and see how the cookie crumbles on Saturday afternoon. Ultimately, there could be a lot of movement in my top 10. Georgia could lose, Florida State, Texas, Michigan, Penn State, Oregon, and Washington are two of those teams that could easily find themselves in the top 5 over the next few weeks. They're that good. I mean, really, really good. And so I understand that they're in the Pac-12. They're also ranked higher than USC, which I did not expect. But after what I've seen from Oregon and Washington so far this year, I'm having a hard time keeping them outside of my top 5 right now because they have played that well. A lot of ball left to play. We're going to see how things are going to go in the future and if there will be any movement in the top 10 next week after this weekend's slate of games. Out of here on a Tuesday, you can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. You can send all of your emails to jstevens317@gmail.com. This has been Locked on Buckeyes here on a Tuesday. I'll see you next time.